Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hi, David, and welcome. Are you taking lessons from your cat on purring? And welcome everyone to episode 241. This is the really heartwarming and such a moving conclusion to last week's personal work that we did that David and Jill did with Elizabeth, and today we'll be seeing the conclusion of that work.
And today you're going to hear the A. We've done last week the T, the testing, the E, the empathy, and now you're going to hear the A, the assessment of resistance. You're going to hear that's A equals assessment of resistance, M equals methods, and then about a 2-month follow-up. Did it work? Was it helpful? What happened? Did she find the inner peace she's been yearning for since she was age 13? And we have just one mention that today is May 10th, and on May 16th, is that Friday or Saturday? Do you know?
Oh, that's a Sunday.
Oh, yeah, a Sunday. That's right. May 16th, Sunday. I'm doing a fantastic workshop with Jill Levitt, as we're going to present it together under the sponsorship of the Feeling Good Institute. And it's the live therapy workshop, and we're going to treat live 2 volunteers from the audience who are struggling with depression and anxiety, and see if we can bring about a complete or dramatic reduction, if not complete elimination of symptoms. And it will be inspiring. It'll be emotional. There'll be a lot of tears, a lot of laughter. You'll see exactly what works, exactly what doesn't, and why. And you'll also have a chance to participate in small group exercises with other participants from the workshop. And that's one of the cool things of the Feeling Good Institute one-day workshops is you get this personal practice, so you can take something home with you to use in your clinical work. So I hope you can join us. I think there's 6 or maybe even 7 CE credits. It's inexpensive given the cost currently of workshops. They've always kept their prices very moderate, and we always have a lot of fun. They sometimes call Jill and David the dynamic duo.
Definitely.
And so I will not say that and toot my horn, but it does feel pretty fun and dynamic. And if you can join us, it'll be even cooler. So how do they find out about this,
So
Rhonda?
they can register either by going to your website, feelinggood.com, or by going to the feelinggoodinstitute.com website. And both of the websites have tabs for resources and training.
Cool. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed the conclusion, and thank you for listening, and we'll be eager to see your feedback and see what you thought about the session with Elizabeth. So let's see, what can we ask you again then? You've already done a pretty good job of answering this, but if at the end of the evening you say, wow, that was really a wonderful experience, what would happen? What would change? And, maybe some of that's happened already, but let's...
Yeah. No, you're right. It's already starting to happen. And this is, I think, where I wanted to there's a sense of peace that's starting to open up on it all. So what would happen is, I think I'd somehow would work with and tweak the two thoughts that you highlighted that I think is still driving this. I need the pressure to function, and my schedule has to be full, or I can't miss this opportunity. Those are real thoughts that just drive this terror, right? And even if, as I say it now, I mean, David, when you first brought it up, I was thinking you were spot on, because that terror was at about 100. And when I just said it now and looked at those thoughts, I'm probably at about 50.
Mm-hmm. Let's just dive in right there. But also, Jill, I wanted to ask you now or at some point if some exposure might actually complement working with the negative thoughts, because of the terror, and you're so good at setting up some exposures. But I'd say, since we were presented with these two really great thoughts, why don't we start out on those?
Sure. And then you mean like cognitive exposure or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm going to let my cat out before we start, so then we won't keep hearing him. I'm sorry.
I will miss your cat. And while she's doing that, I'll just read your distortions in those two thoughts. My practice must be full. That's all or nothing thinking, mental filter, magnification, and a should statement. It might also be emotional reasoning too.
Right.
And then I need pressure to function. You say that's jumping to conclusions. I love that call. And all or nothing thinking. I love that too. And fortune telling, and magnification, and emotional reasoning. And it's maybe a hidden should statement too.
Right.
I should pressure myself, and I should always function, at full tilt and so forth. Would you want to jump right into them with either double standard, Jill, or externalization of voices?
Could we just do 2 minutes of identify the distortions? I just want to hear Elizabeth give us some.
And explain the distortions. I love it, Jill.
So, Elizabeth, you have this thought: my schedule must be full. Mm-hmm. And you said that's all or nothing thinking. I mean, you identified a number of them, but explain to us, why is that all or nothing thinking?
Well, it's all or nothing thinking because there is no other option. It's like it's either full or it's not, and it just has to be full.
Okay. And so there's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground. There's no shades of gray there.
Yeah.
Or 1 through 9, as I would say. It's just the 0 and the 10. Yeah.
Yeah. And why is it then mental filter? To explain that to us.
That one struck me because it's mental filter, because I'm only focusing on it must be full, and I'm not thinking of any other option, and that all these negative things will happen if it's not.
Okay. Well, that would be fortune telling, right?
Or is that more fortune telling? Okay.
That these negative things would happen if it's not full. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's fortune telling. So maybe there isn't a mental filter. It's fortune.
Well, I wonder, with the mental filter, it would mean that you're focusing on the negatives of the schedule not being full and ignoring the potential positives of it not being full.
Yes, that is true too. There's that thought.
If that were true, what would that? How is that? What positives are you ignoring?
The positives I'm ignoring if my schedule wasn't full is that I could do other things. I could exercise a little more. I could just I could do other things.
Okay.
It's basically, yeah.
Okay.
That can be just.
And the mental filter would be, if I have one empty slot, I'll focus on that hole, like a balloon with a hole in it.
Right.
That's the mental filter part.
Right, and not notice all the patients that I do have in my schedule, or all the money that I am making, or whatever it would be.
Which I totally do.
Yeah.
If I have a hole I mean, I had 3 people that rescheduled this week, and I went, oh my gosh, I've got to fill those today. which I did, but because I have a waiting list. But yeah, there's the mental filter right there. That's crazy, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then should we look at the other thought? David, I'm not sure. I'm happy to lead this, but if you had another thought, feel free to interrupt me.
Jill, all is great. All is good.
Okay. Well, so then what about you have one other thought you really wanted to work on, which is I need the pressure to function.
Yeah.
And that one too, then maybe tell us why is that you have
jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, jumping to conclusions.
Because if I don't have the pressure, you know, then it goes into fortune telling, then something bad's going to happen, right? And then I just have this thought that I need the pressure to function. I don't have any facts. I don't know if I need pressure to function. It's just the way it's always been.
Right. You wouldn't know, I guess you're saying. You're jumping to conclusions, the idea that I must have pressure in order to function, but we don't really know. Like, if you didn't have pressure, would you still be functioning?
Right.
Right.
I probably, but I rarely think about that. Yeah.
Right.
So would that be something we could write down in the positive thought column?
Which is, if I didn't have pressure, would I still be functioning? But that's a question.
Well, that's a question. So if we could put that into a statement like, is there any evidence that I need pressure to function? Or just make a statement, there's actually no evidence.
No evidence.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the statement. There is no evidence that I need pressure to function. That is true. There is no evidence.
Yeah.
How true is that between 0 and 100?
The number popped in my head was 100%.
Great. Now, how much do you believe I need the pressure to function?
Well, there's no evidence. It didn't dial it down much. Probably down to about a 75.
Okay, you can put a line through the 100 and put a 75 in that same compartment. Now, we can go on with the other distortions, but let me ask you a question here. Is that a thought that you really want to get rid of, or maybe that's something we shouldn't be challenging? Because that, again, what does that thought show? We forgot to do our positive reframing, Jill.
Yeah, no, I think we do need to do it for sure.
Yeah. Let's do a little positive reframing. What are some advantages of telling yourself, I need pressure to function? We can kind of list them here.
Sure. The advantages of telling myself that I need pressure to function is that it keeps me moving when I'm tired.
Add that to your list. Keeps me moving. What else?
That is very familiar. I can't remember a time that I didn't feel pressure around money.
Sure. And what does it show about you that's positive and awesome?
Well, it's all people have said even here today. I have a good work ethic. It's very strong.
Is that important?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. What else does it show about you that's positive and awesome?
That I'm responsible.
Is that important?
That's important, sure. That I care about my family. I care about my business.
Put those down. Is that true?
That is true.
Is that important?
Yep.
Is that powerful?
It is. Yes, it is powerful.
What are some
Absolutely.
other
and
great
what's
things?
Even more powerful is there's something here about that whole legacy thing that this proves I won't, I won't pass down the legacy of
family legacy.
Yeah, of deprivation.
Yeah, I can change the family legacy.
Yep.
Of deprivation. And failure.
and failure and not having money.
Yeah. Is that important?
That's like so important.
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
What else? Yeah,
you're
go
just
ahead, Jill.
talking about the thought, but how about just the feel? I mean, we can talk about why is it really important for you to be really, really anxious, terrified even about not having enough money. Why is that important?
Oh, yeah. That's important because the thought that just popped in my head is because then it won't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Put that down.
Protects me, right? So my anxiety and worry and pressure protects me from
disaster.
Yeah.
Right. And financial ruin.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What are some other really wonderful things about your negative feelings and this thought? I need pressure to function, and your frustration and your shame and your anxiety and your sadness and your anger. What do these things show about you, and all that pressure? What does it show about you that's positive and awesome? And what are some tremendous benefits to you?
Well, it shows that.
Sorry, if people want to be doing it as an exercise, they could also enter it in the chat box. The answers to David's questions, if you guys want to be doing your own exercise, is thinking. Sorry, I interrupted your question, though.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, the good things about all those, being anxious and terrified. I mean, it's, man, it comes down to it's kept me alive.
Mm-hmm. Is that important?
Yeah.
Put that down. That's number 8 on my list. It's kept me alive.
In several situations, yes, and kept the bills, me being a responsible human being, meaning, paying the rent, paying the bills, functioning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing.
I pay the bills. What else is just really super awesome about feeling terrified and telling yourself I need pressure to function and putting yourself under a lot of pressure?
It keeps me independent.
Is that important?
Self-supporting. Yeah, those are really important.
Put that down.
That counters that whole dependency fear thing.
Sure. It keeps me independent and self-supporting. Now, can I...
And self-reliant. That's huge.
Yeah. Can we make that a separate one? Strong and self-reliant.
Sure. Strong and self-reliant. Yep.
Protects your daughter from having to take care of you.
Absolutely.
Shows your love for your daughter.
Yep.
And you're willing to sacrifice.
Yeah, she doesn't have to. I can sacrifice, but she doesn't too. It enables her to do. Here's the family legacy thing: is that she's going to art school. We've had a whole line of artists in our family that never realized themselves because we were always worried about surviving and money.
Mm.
And this is a big deal. She's going to art school.
Cool.
Like you're giving her permission to do something that you weren't able to do yourself.
Exactly. And that she really wants to do.
Yeah. And then could there also be a religious thing? I don't know if you're religious, but there's something about self-sacrifice in a lot of religious thinking. The giving of yourself to others. Sacrifice.
No, I mean, because I practice Buddhism, so it would be more, it's not so much self-sacrifice as no, I don't think so. It doesn't fit into that.
Self-preservation, right?
Self-preservation, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now the question might be, I mean, we could keep adding to this list, and I'm sure we'd come up with much more, but given all of these benefits of that thought, maybe that's not something we should be
I know.
trying to let go of or trying to challenge.
This is exactly what I was talking about. There's a lot of good stuff attached to this.
Yeah. So Elizabeth, if you do, continue to push yourself and put pressure on yourself and keep saying yes and, kind of carry the load, and don't say no, then you'll be able to, take care of yourself and your family and protect your daughter and, show how much you value independence and self-reliance. And that sounds incredibly important. So why would you want to change that? Why would you want to give up that pressure?
Yeah, because you're going to change the family's legacy. And that's very incredibly important, what you're doing.
It's true. It is important what I'm doing. However, as soon as you said I'm going to change the family's legacy, will I? Because I have already struggled with health problems. And going through with this terror, I mean, I don't, there's something there, but I can't, because it is all very tempting to just keep it, but it doesn't need to be 100%. That's what I'm trying to, I don't need this to be the only mode of operation, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that you think that you could actually still be independent and self-reliant and have a decent income without telling yourself that you must have pressure to function and that you can't ever have an opening in your schedule?
Yes, that is, yeah.
And then suppose that we could dial down some of these negative feelings to lower levels. What would those levels be tonight?
Sure.
Like how unhappy would you want to feel tonight?
0.
You know, are we going to buy that, Jill?
What were you going to say, Elizabeth?
I said 0 for unhappy, and David, you said, are you going to buy that?
Yeah, but you were going to say something else. What were you saying?
Oh, well, then I thought he was going to move to the next line because, I didn't check off frightened on the next one. And actually I should, because we've been talking about terror.
Yeah, we'll add frightened.
Yeah, check off frightened. And
that's 85.
If you put that in there, that puts it up to 100.
100. Yeah. And then how frightened would you want to be at the end of the evening?
Well, I don't want to be frightened anymore. That I'd like to dial down to 0. I mean, I can be a little nervous and even worried sometimes and somewhat anxious, and I'd like to dial that down to like 20.
20. Okay, we'll put a 20 there for the goal.
If Elizabeth had said 0 on the anxious cluster, I would have said, not so fast, sister.
Right.
Right.
On the sadness, unhappy, I mean, I don't know. I'm okay with the 0, but, I'm definitely okay with the 0 on the anxiety line, but
it seems to me there's something worth being genuinely sad about, like we're sad.
You're right. Actually, no, probably like 10%.
10, yeah, I'm much happier with 10.
Yeah, you're right. Because I'd probably be a little unhappy that I don't have this pressure anymore.
Well, it's also sad, that you've hurt so much and sacrificed so much.
Oh, that's true too.
And alone, run, kind of hiding and all of that. I'm surprised you didn't put any lonely down. How bad and ashamed?
Yeah, I noticed I didn't check ashamed, but actually that should be there, and it probably is 100. How much do I want to dial that down? Well, I think I'd feel a little bad still, but the ashamed, I'd really like that to go away. So I'm thinking like 10, 15. Okay.
We'll put 10 to 15. And how discouraged do you want to feel tonight?
Now that I'd like to dial down to 0.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. How stuck do you want to feel? That was your highest one of all. Although we have others have gone up to 100, but that was 100.
I think 10, 15.
Okay, 10 to 15. And that's enough stuckness?
No, let's make it 20.
20. That's enough? 20?
Yeah, 20 is enough. That'll keep me going. Yeah.
How angry, irritated, and upset do you want to feel?
I don't really want to feel any of those.
You want a 0?
Yeah, I'd like that to be the 0. I don't know if that's useful in this situation, really.
We could argue, you said that actually you're angry, upset, and irritated with yourself for being so focused on money. So maybe that kind of motivates you to work on this and change, right? That was this kind of frustrated that I still drive myself in this way. So I was thinking maybe it's important to still have some level of frustration or upset with yourself so that you'd be motivated to change.
Right. That's a valid point. Yeah. So with that, I'd keep in mind about 20.
20, great. Okay, good. Now, let me, can we kind of, Jill, maybe shift back after my goof up there and maybe take another look at this thought that we've been working on. Do you still want to believe 75% I need the pressure to function?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't need the pressure to function.
How much do you believe what you just said?
I don't need the pressure to function. I believe that 100%.
Great. Put that in the right-hand column.
Okay.
I don't need it, and that's 100. And now how much do you believe I do need it?
Oh, that just went down to 20.
20. Okay, great. And that's probably low enough on that. Now, can we jump right into either double standard or externalization of voices?
Yeah.
Sure.
What you want to go for the tough one, the externalization of voices?
Are you asking me or Jill?
You.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Externalization of voices.
Now, what's your name?
My name's Elizabeth.
What's my name?
Your name's Elizabeth.
What's Jill's name?
Jill's name's Elizabeth.
Okay, you want to take over here, Jill, and get us rolling on this?
Sure. Elizabeth, I just wanted to remind you that you need this pressure in order to function.
Yeah. No, I don't need this pressure to function. And really what's creating the more pressure is really listening to you tell me I need this pressure. I think that's what keeps me up at night. So I know I don't need this pressure to function. I function fine because there are times when I don't have this pressure and I function. I mean, and I do just fine and everything keeps going on. And I also don't need the pressure from you because, like I said, you just keep me up at night. So no, I don't need you or the pressure to function.
Who won?
Me.
And who won that? Yeah, was that big or small?
That was big.
Was that big or huge?
I'd say that was huge. Yeah.
I thought it was huge too, but now it's my term. This is tag team stuff.
Okay.
And you beat your other self down over there, but I have one that you won't be able to defeat. Are you ready?
Okay. Yep.
Elizabeth, you know darn well that your schedule has to be full.
Oh, it doesn't have to be full. I appreciate you reminding me, but once again, it doesn't have to be full. It's true. It is uncomfortable when it's not. And I think that is worth exposing myself to, actually, and doing some of. because the more that I have that experience, then the less uncomfortable it's going to be. So it doesn't have to be full. It's just that I feel uncomfortable when it's not full. And once again, I don't need you reminding me about that, because it's not 100% true. And you keep me up at night also, and I'm kind of tired about that. So no, my schedule does not have to be full.
Great. Who won?
Me.
Big or small?
Big.
Big or huge?
Huge.
Huge. And by the way, group, what technique is Elizabeth using? The acceptance paradox, the self-defense paradigm, or the CAT, which is called counterattack technique? Those are the three strategies for externalization of voices.
We've got a lot of cats coming up.
So anybody, what technique is Elizabeth using?
Oh, so many people are putting in the chat box, David.
Putting in the chat. Oh, I'm elderly and I don't know how to use these new innovations. Yeah, CAT, excellent use of CAT, excellent use of CAT.
Right, and then some self-defense.
Self-defense and CAT.
Right.
Yeah, super. Super. By the way, group, what is the best technique? CAT, the acceptance paradox, or the self-defense paradigm? What's the one you should be using?
Whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. And any combination that clicks. You want to take over, Jill?
Yeah, I was going to ask Elizabeth. I mean, we are recording it, so you can always listen to it afterwards. But with my patients, anyway, I would definitely be asking you to write down these responses that you're thinking are kind of killer big win responses. So with this last one, you said it doesn't have to be full. It's uncomfortable when it's not full. And actually, it's worth doing some exposure to it not being full so I can get used to it. But it's not true that it has to be full. It's just uncomfortable for me.
Right.
And I just have to say, we can move on to other thoughts, but I just have to say, I think what you said is really powerful, that this is why we said it's also emotional reasoning. It's your habit. It's what you do, right? You can't tolerate it being empty, or not empty, having any openings. And so you fill it right away. And so you don't know what it feels like for it to have an opening, to have a Tuesday at 2:00 with no patients, and to see what that feels like. And so the only way you could really test that, and then ultimately really believe that it's okay if it's not full, is by holding your feet to the fire and and kind of insisting on having an opening. You could start with one opening a week or something like that, where you just kind of chilled for an hour and you'd see what it would feel like.
That would be in vivo exposure, which is great. But you're great also, Jill, on cognitive flooding and cognitive exposure. And this would depend on if you can make yourself anxious, Elizabeth. But can you think about a schedule that's only 2/3 full, or a couple patients canceling, and see the empty slots opening up? And can you make yourself anxious?
Well, just as Jill was saying that, I was feeling anxious. So yeah, I can make myself anxious.
How anxious can you make yourself right now?
Well, if you're talking 2/3, or even if I think about the 3 slots I did have this morning that I no longer have now because I filled them, I'm at a 90, easy. 90 anxiety, and yeah.
Yeah, and we can do it now or not do it now, but the instruction is very simple. You even have a cognitive flooding flow sheet in your toolkit that I created about a year ago. And what you would do, and Jill, you may have other ways of doing it, they're probably all good, but you just do this every day. Say, give yourself 10 minutes or as long as you want. And every minute in the column, you'd put down the time, and then your anxiety from 0 to 100. Like this would be 628, and then 90 in the anxiety column, and then in the right-hand column, you could jot down what the fantasy is, because the fantasy might change or evolve. And then the goal of it, as you know, being yourself an anxiety expert, would be to make yourself as anxious as possible for as long as possible.
Right.
And to do that until it becomes impossible to feel anxiety, that the thing becomes really boring, and you can do it all at once, or you can do it in little chunks, or we could even do it now for a few minutes. I'll turn it back to Jill, because whenever you talk about exposure, you add a lot of depth to the discussion.
Well, I would say I'm thinking about this a little differently. And again, they're all always lead to Rome. It's not right or wrong. But the way that I see it is this is something that you could very easily do in real life. So personally, I'd rather actually see you commit to in vivo exposure of, let's say, having one opening. If typically you literally have no opening, and if you think that actually leaving an opening, next time you have a cancellation, not moving to refill it and tolerating an opening and then doing exposure in that moment. Like, I'd rather see you do in vivo exposure on something you could do in vivo exposure on. And I would think about the cognitive flooding, or cognitive exposure would be an exercise we would do, and we don't necessarily need to do tonight, but that one would do around something you couldn't experience, which would be like financial ruin. Like if that is haunting you, then you could do cognitive exposure around, like David's
being in a nursing home and daughter coming and
spiral, and none of us have any work to do, and then Elizabeth has no patience. Right, exactly. And then you're dependent on your daughter, and so then we would either have you write out a script or have you tell the story or the narrative, and that would be a different way we could do cognitive exposure with that, and then again, alternatively, I would be likely to just ask you if you'd be willing for homework to do some kind of in vivo exposure where you would tolerate the opening in your schedule and really lean in and allow yourself to feel whatever comes up for you. And then you could like write down your anxiety rating and that kind of thing. What do you think, Elizabeth? We just kind of threw a bunch of different ideas at you.
Yeah, and they're all very good ideas. And then there's a part of me that's I'm watching my anxiety rise as you are talking about this. And then there's another part of me that's saying, I think I need both.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Elizabeth. Yeah, and the nice thing about the cognitive flooding, it could offer really rapid change. And the great thing about the in vivo exposure that Jill brilliantly mentioned is that that's really changing your life, getting out and, like for social anxiety, doing the flirting training, talking to strangers. So I think you're right, Elizabeth. This would be a 2-barrel shotgun or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's also other thoughts we could work on now, right? So we could continue to do externalization of voices or even the double standard on some of these other thoughts.
Okay. So are you asking me which direction I'd like to go right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'd actually
that's unimportant. It's really what we want to do.
Of course. I'd like to do a setup with cognitive exposure right now, really.
That sounds awesome.
And then I'll commit to some sort of the in vivo, but yeah, to start the cognitive exposure here, and then I'll take that out as homework too, because I know you got to do that daily.
Oh, fabulous, because we've never done cognitive exposure that I can recall live in the group or during our live demos. We've mentioned it to people sometimes who have or have not followed through, but do it right now and close your eyes, and I'll be your assistant and put down the minutes and the anxiety level, but make yourself as anxious as possible. And, when you're good and anxious, tell us how anxious you are from 0 to 100 and what you're thinking.
So my anxiety is at 100 because and it's just that I'm looking at, I know I'm supposed to take this further, but I'm just looking at my schedule and it's only, let's go for half full. That'll keep it up there.
Yeah.
And
Great.
not only is it half full, but that's for the week. And then for like, the weeks after that, it's like a quarter full.
Awesome.
And the phone hasn't rung in 2 days.
Yeah, awesome. I love it.
Or I haven't had an email or inquiry at all.
Yeah. Okay. Just hold that, and see if you can keep that at 100 for 2 minutes. It's 7:34 right now.
7:34? You mean 6:34?
Yeah, 6:34.
Oh, wow.
That was close. I mean, for a person my age, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's still up there. Oof.
Great. You're still at 100?
Yeah.
Good. Perfect. It's 6:35. That's been one minute. And is the fantasy the same?
Yeah, it's still quarter full, half full, no calls, nothing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. You can make it worse too if you like.
Sure. I'll raise the schedule for the weeks to follow. Or drop that down to like maybe a couple of people.
Only 2 people scheduled?
Right, for the weeks to follow. And I still got half people, but now the phones have, what amps it is when people don't call or email, if we don't get inquiries, that's what really throws it and keeps it up there.
Okay, well, keep that anxiety at 100.
Right.
If it should start to slip, let me know so I can help you push it back up.
No. Well, and then let's put another layer on that as I feel my throat getting tighter. Because, I have a group practice. And so this also impacts everybody else because we got to fill everybody else's schedule too, or I do.
Mm.
So if the phones haven't rung in a week and now I'm going to go through and look at everybody else's schedule and see how they're doing and they're low too, I am in absolute panic.
Okay, see if you can make that happen. We can go above 100, by the way, when you go into the panic range.
That will take it to 110 easily. And to the point where it's really hard for me to, this is interesting. It's hard for me to talk. My throat is getting very tight and my chest is tense. And this is like pretty terrifying because now I'm letting other people down too.
That's great. You're doing really well.
Wow. And I'm starting to think like, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? Oh my gosh, I've got to get this going. What's going to happen?
So David, I would be doing this differently. And so I'm not jumping in just because you and I have different ways of doing cognitive exposure. So I'm going to just let you do it, unless you wanted me to do it, but then it will look a little different.
Yeah, go ahead. Take a shot at it.
Well, I do it a little more like the what if technique. So I'd have you, the goal is still definitely to make yourself as anxious as you can possibly imagine, Elizabeth.
Okay.
But I just like you to actually tell me the story of really the worst thing that might happen and then what might happen. And the goal is just to stay in the present tense, keep your eyes closed, be talking about it in the present tense and just kind of let this like horrible nightmare kind of unfold, and tell us what you're thinking and what you're feeling as your practice dries up and you get no more calls and your associates start to have no more patience. What happens next? And tell us how you're thinking and feeling.
Right. Well, I'm feeling very, very scared and frightened. And my schedule is drying up, and others are now the associates are starting to come to me and ask me what's wrong because they don't have clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then and here's the external fear. There's a crash in the economy. So there are things out of our control, and there's predominantly we're all private pay. So now there's a legitimate reason. So people literally don't have the money for therapy and they're canceling. Mm-hmm. And what if they did that? Well, then I'd have to start letting go some of the associates. And what if that happened? Well, then I'd feel absolutely awful, and it would be absolutely devastating. Oh my gosh, it just would be. I can't even imagine.
How anxious are you now?
I'm still at 120.
120?
Yeah, more. I mean, it's just. And then I've got this image of me just like standing in the office all by myself because it's all gone now. And there's like this huge recession outside, and I've had to let people go, and I can't train anybody. And people, other therapists aren't even calling me for trainings or anything because nobody can afford it because it's just all falling down. And then I fast forward to limping along like this for a long time because I won't actually be able to retire because it'll impact me so greatly. And so now I'm working until I'm 80 with like a handful of clients. That sounds pretty silly, actually. So my anxiety just dropped on that one.
What did that bring it down to?
That brought it down to about 50.
50. See, try to drive it up. You're 85.
Yeah, I know. I need to drive it up.
You only have three clients left. This is serious.
I'm sitting there when I'm like 80 years old. And it's like this little dark office, and there I am, and trying to make things work, and it's not happening. It's been this way for a while. And, oh, interesting. What just rose it up then? I just had this thought, then my husband gets sick. I don't know, has a heart attack. He doesn't die, but he has a heart attack, or he gets diagnosed with some end of the life Parkinson's or something. And so now I got to figure out how to work and take care of him. And now I'm like 85 years old.
Sorry to be laughing about your husband's Parkinson's disease. How anxious are you now? It sounds horrible.
I'm at a 30 now.
30. What happened there? Why is it coming down, do you think?
Well, and the image is even fading because it's like, that's so like goofy.
Yeah.
There's still some nervousness because I could honestly see myself working until I'm 80. But that's different. Because if I was working until I'm 80, I'd be doing that because I want to, and because I'd be maybe having a handful of clients, but that's because I love what I do so much.
Right. Right.
Here it is.
There's some
Now
tears there.
Tears. Yeah.
Yeah, let them flow. You're doing just beautiful, Elizabeth. Just let them flow, and then tell us what you're thinking in a little bit.
Here it is that it just clicked. The anger and the upsetness is because the flip side of this is that wow, I can't even talk.
That's good.
That I have such a passion still for what I do, that there isn't anything I want to do more than be able to do what I do for free or for minimal. I don't want to be charging money for what I do, but I've got to.
I know that feeling well. Yeah, I'm 200% with you on that. I see a lot of people nodding their heads too.
And so it's hard. Go ahead.
Yeah, tell us more and how this is connected to the tears.
Yeah, well, it's connected to the tears because there's the fears just kind of lifted because when I was talking about when I'm 80 and saying, oh, I'm going to be in this office alone but then the other thought is that, yeah, when I'm 80, I still would love to have a handful of clients. And in some ways I can't wait for that moment because then I can charge them all $5 and do great work and it would be fine. I mean, that to me would be part of my retirement. It's not like
you were trying to scare the crap out of yourself and make yourself feel awful, and then you had this image of yourself as an 80-year-old still having to work, and then you thought, oh, that sounds like a dream come true. So your greatest fear suddenly became like a gift. It was unbelievable to see.
You look the monster in the face there.
Yeah. I guess, well, you're so right, both of you.
I do want to tell you one thing, though, from personal experience, Elizabeth.
Please.
This is more of a genuine warning, is that people up in their high 70s approaching 80 should not be treating people.
Okay.
No one got my humor. When you tell your humor, no one laughs. You're in deep shit. The Buddha said that in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. My brother turns 80 5 days after you, Alex, turn 39 this month. And I'll be there myself pretty soon. And I know what you mean. I just love treating people. I've never loved treating people more than I do now, although I've always loved it. Treating people is such a joy. And I have the chance to treat people, without charging. And it's, it's such a privilege and it's such a joy.
Like right now, Dave, like you're a 77-year-old treating someone for free right now.
No, I'm 78, I think.
Oh, are you 78?
Yeah, I'm 78. Yeah, that was my joke, but nobody got it. Yeah, you've been so beautiful tonight, Elizabeth. To reflect a little bit on what's been happening here, because I'm sure you're thinking on two levels: one the patient, and one the brilliant therapist that you are. Two, the understanding I, and then the experiencing self.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking that was a very powerful cognitive flooding. And I didn't expect it to be. I figured I'd have to, and I still am willing to do some homework, but I was thinking, it's going to take I'm going to really have to keep doing this. And what made it so powerful is that it brought that conflict, it melted it. It's that conflict of, I do want to keep working for a very long time, and I'd like to embrace that. But the way I want to embrace it is to be able to do like you said, David, to do sessions for little or no fee, or to donate my services or give my services to a nonprofit and help train or something like that as I get older. And there is a part of me that's worried that I might not be able to do that because of this, concern of like, well, what if we don't hit our retirement target? What if I have to keep working for money? But even as I say that now, it's not as charged as it was even 20 minutes ago.
You know that my wife and I were homeless for a while, right?
Yeah, you mentioned that. Mm-hmm.
And I treated people for free because it was what I wanted to do. But I had finished medical school. I wasn't planning to do a residency, and we were down in Pacific Grove area and Carmel Valley, and I would just approach people on the beach or in a coffee house and try to counsel them. But because it was free, they didn't take it that seriously. So that's why I did my residency. I said, and we would sleep on people's living rooms at night. We didn't have any place to live, and Melanie was about to have a baby, and but that's why I did my residency. I thought, well, at least if I did my residency, I still won't know anything, but people won't know that. They'll think I know something, so at least I'll be able to get paid and survive type of thing. But now I'm right back to where I started out, just loving treating people for free. I love what you've been saying here, and the warmth and compassion that's been emerging out of the flames of exposure.
It sounds like it sounds like you're saying that in fact, you really like being busy, and you really like treating patients, and you really like having a very full practice, and you even started out by saying, and the fact is it kind of works for your life. Your daughter's off at college, your husband, it sounds like, works hard and then kind of is really creative and solitary on the weekends. And so it's not disrupting any of your important relationships. It really feels, lovely to you, except when money gets in the way, except when your mind starts telling you that you must do it for money and that you have to avoid financial ruin, and when all these kind of shoulds and musts and self-defeating beliefs kind of come into play, right? And so you're saying that in some ways your dream, which would be to be able to do what you love and not even charge for it, right, is because that would be the true disconnection between being busy and doing what you love, but not being driven, right, by money and survival, right? And that's sort of like, that's the place you'd like to be at, right?
Yeah, that's what exactly. You said it beautifully, Jill. It really is that. It's not, and that's been the conflict all along, and I couldn't see it as clearly. It's not that thank goodness, it's not that I don't like what I do. I really, really enjoy what I do. And it's, I've been doing it for, at varying degrees for 30 years. I started out as a counselor at the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinics.
Oh, did you really? Bless your heart. When was that?
That was in the 80s.
Oh, in the 80s. Yeah, was David Smith, was he the head of that or something?
David Smith was there, yep. And Anaba, I forgot his name, and that's where I worked I was the night shift in the women's detox clinic, and that's where I got the love for it. And not that I'd want to do that specifically again, but it was an incredible launching pad, and I don't know where I was going with this, but I've just been doing this for so long, and I love it.
And what you do, and that you've always loved what you did. And so it's not about even necessarily having to do less of it. Like, what's causing you to feel sick and have all these, issues is the stress, the pressure, the negative thoughts, right? Like, I need this, I must do this, rather than like, I love doing this. I don't want to have free time because I just want to do more of it, and it's fun.
Exactly. And that's the way I see my whole actually, when I think about it, the trainings and the associates I have, all of it, I love it all. And that's what it is. But the thinking gets me to hate it, or hate that I'm in this position. Yeah.
Can we just do one last thing, and then we'll do the end of session testing, and then we'll open it up to the group. But can we just blow away a few more of your negative thoughts here with externalization of voices?
That's what I was going to say, is we should blow them away, and we should ask Elizabeth, are there any other thoughts here that are stressing her out, right? Any other thoughts here that are causing this tension?
You mean on the daily mood log?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we could just run through them all if you want to, or we could ask Elizabeth what ones are still, feeling problematic for you, which ones are still triggering you.
The one that's kind of there is that I have to work all I can now.
Yeah.
Could I talk to you for a minute, Elizabeth?
Sure.
I just wanted to remind you, you know who I am.
Yeah, you're me.
Yeah, and you have to, let's see, where is this? You have to work. Number 9. Oh, yeah, you have to work all you can now, because now you can get that money, and you need that money for your daughter and for your retirement.
Oh, I am like so tired of listening to you, genuinely tired of listening to you, which is a new feeling, actually. I don't really think, no, I know. It's not that I think, I know there's not a lot of truth in what you're saying. Yeah, I got to keep the focus on paying the bills and the college tuition and, that we have the money to put into retirement. But, even if that didn't work out, I just don't need to listen to you anymore, because it would come to fruition. My life is very different than my family legacies. And from their failures, I've learned many things, and I've grown, and I've learned from their mistakes in many ways.
Okay, well, you beat me on that, but the fact is, you can work overtime. It's not a big deal.
Well, that's true. I can work overtime, and I may want to, but sometimes I may not want to, and that's the thing, right? So I don't need to listen to you all the time on that. Once I may want to work overtime because I like it, and because maybe my husband decides he's going to a writing workshop for the whole weekend, and it's just me and the 3 cats, and I'm working at home. But I don't have to do that. I have a choice.
Who won?
I did.
Big or small?
Big.
Big or huge? Huge. Yeah, I think you're just blowing us all out of the water on any of these. Can I ask you right now how sad, how unhappy are you feeling?
How sad am I feeling? Yeah, about 10%.
10%. How anxious and worried and nervous are you feeling?
Yeah, about 15. I'm not frightened.
Yeah, I'm not frightened. That's great. 15/0. How ashamed and bad are you feeling?
Wow, I'm not feeling ashamed. I feel a little bad, maybe at 15%.
Okay. And how discouraged are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm not discouraged at all.
And then how stuck are you feeling?
I'm actually not feeling stuck right now.
Great. And how angry are you feeling?
Maybe 10%.
10%. So maybe I have 2 questions. 10 to 15. Okay. Yeah. So I have 3 questions. First, are these changes real, or are you just being nice?
Oh, no, they're real.
They're real. Secondly, what caused these changes?
What caused them was, well, a shift in my perception, obviously. But how did I get to that shift of perception? Initially, I'd say there was some key points in this whole couple of hours, which was absolutely beautiful. And I have a tremendous amount of gratitude to the 2 of you. Is the check-in about the empathy that shifted, going public with some of my history that had brought up shame, and it released it. And then fast forward to the positive reframe. Glad you caught that, because that was my concern, that as soon as we did a positive reframe, it just started loosening up. And then when it started loosening up, the cognitive flooding was phenomenal. That was a huge piece. That would put me into peace. I felt peace after that, and I'm looking at this. So yeah,
that's so great to hear. Why don't we open it up to the group? And Jill, you may have some final comments. I don't have anything more at this point except just to thank you for being beautiful you and for sharing so much at such a deep level and taking us with you. And just allowing this to happen. I think I feel so close to you and so admiring, and we'll see what everyone else is thinking and feeling. But I just when anyone in the group, when we do personal work, when I get to work with you, Jill, which is just fantastic, and whenever I work with somebody, it's. That's a very special thing, and I will now shut up and let the group, who's been so patient, ask questions, comment.
One thing too, yeah, and then we'll listen to the group. Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being so open and genuine and sharing, such deeply personal thoughts and feelings and kind of family history with us. I love getting to know you better and seeing kind of who you are. And it also kind of blows me away every time we do, team, especially live work, because it's rapid, versus like patients unfolding before your eyes kind of week by week. But when you think about what happened tonight, it's like, I thought Elizabeth wanted to work on being able to say no. And I suspected before you shared with us, just looking at your daily mood log, that this was really going to be like a habit addiction thing, right? Being able to set limits and say no and like tolerate disappointing another person or a new patient, or even maybe a narcissism thing around like, but other people can see your patients, you know what I mean? Like they'll get better. So there were just so many places my brain went when I saw your daily mood log even. And then it was, but it just reminds me that as a team CBT therapist, like we don't actually know what our patient needs, and we need to kind of like listen and empathize and let it unfold. And then the whole agenda setting process, right, of kind of repeatedly asking you what you want, like what would this really look like? Because I didn't grasp it immediately, right? Like continuing, and if tonight was a perfect session, what would be different? And then really trying to understand, it's like I would be accepting of the fact that I want to work a lot, right? And yet I would not be putting so much intense pressure on myself and feeling that I need to work in order to survive. So anyway, it was just really cool and fascinating to be on this side of it.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks.
The floor is open.
So if people have
I wanted to ask a quick question. Well, first off, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing yourself and today. It was very moving, and it was a very genuine pleasure to hear about you, and also to when you shared your tears with us and your vulnerability. It was really quite a good experience. Well, that's weird way of saying it, but it was a very heartwarming experience for me, and because I can identify with a lot of the things that you've struggled with. If I could ask you, Elizabeth, that moment when you were doing the cognitive exposure, when the tears started to come, and it was kind of like your aha moment. What was that like for you? What kind of like shifted at that moment in time? I'm very curious.
Yeah, that's a good question, Kai. And thank you for your words. Thank everybody for your word, everyone for their words. But yeah, there's something, what shifted in the cognitive was interesting. Literally my vision, my image of my 80-year-old went from black and white to color. And it was like, oh, that's it. And it all and then my whole, but my throat that was getting tight and everything, it all just relaxed. And then I felt these tears, because it was like this image that I think was so split came together, and it all made sense in a different way.
Let me ask you a quick question, building on what Kai said, and you can then continue, Kai. Would some therapists be afraid to use exposure and cognitive flooding, even tonight? And what are those fears?
Are you asking the group or me?
Anybody, really. Yeah. How about you? Yeah, you, Elizabeth.
And one
I
thing
wouldn't
I
have
want to tell people is that like Elizabeth, I would definitely give you even given what happened tonight, I would still give you homework. I would
Yeah.
still love to give you two kinds of homework.
Right.
Again, I would have to negotiate it and see if you were up for it. But like, I would be prescribing you one thing which would be related to the cognitive exposure. I actually want you to try to either write out a script or record a script where you're really asking yourself, and then what would happen, and then what would happen, and really trying to go to like what would be the worst thing that could happen, and hold that, and trying to make yourself as anxious as possible. And I usually have my patients record that, like say it out loud and record it, and then listen to it repeatedly, maybe 20 minutes a day, every day, until you really are just bored to death and it's no longer causing you any anxiety. And then also, depending, I mean,
before you go on, what you just said was pure gold.
Yeah.
That's so fantastic. I'm sorry, I just want to underscore that. Continue.
And then I was going to say, depending on, I'm not 100% sure if it's your agenda, but I think it was your agenda to then also to have maybe an opening in your schedule and to tolerate that, right? To see what it would feel like to have that opening, and like to commit to that. Maybe you'd say like for 1 month, I'll like not fill this one opening. Or, I mean, we would have to figure out exactly what that would look like, but I would do some sort of in vivo exposure too.
Yeah.
And then finish your daily mood log, the written. Yeah. I thought you were going to say that, Jill, too. Finish the positive thoughts.
Got it.
And fill in the positive thoughts on your daily mood log.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Back to you, Kai.
Oh, yeah. My last question was like kind of like what you described. You said like it was like it got filled with color. That kind of image that you had. Was that for you kind of almost like because it was something you were just so frightened and scared of? Was that kind of like almost just allowing it to happen kind of really helped?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it was the absurdity of it, right? That's where I got to, was I allowed it to happen. And then I saw how absurd it was, and that actually I did want a handful of clients when I was 80. I just wanted to be able to treat them for free or for little or nothing. And then that's when the color brought in. It was like that joy again of like, oh yeah, this is why I do this, because I love it and I'm passionate. And actually my end of life goal would be to continue to see people to, who knows, until the day before I die. I don't know, but not to be so burdened with all the distortions that we've, untangled around money and having to do these things.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it was less kind of tangled up in that kind of stuff. Then.
Yeah. Okay. It completely untangled it. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful to hear.
Question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions from anybody?
This is Sunny. I just want to tell everyone, but directly to Elizabeth, is when I first started doing my private practice, I was pretty anxious. And I, even do a podcast about that. And a lot of generous people, but one of the generous, one of them is Elizabeth. And I was feeling a little guilty because she can't say no. So I actually was asking for her time. And she said yes right away. And she was very generous, giving me a lot of time, walking me through what I need to do on the technical side, but also giving me the confidence that I would be able to do fine. And I, kind of calm my nerve down. And then again, in fact, she was right. I actually run into trying to figure out how much patient I really want now. And this is, again, a very timely sharing from her. And I love Elizabeth. Like she looked very strong and very competent, which you are, but also like a teddy bear at heart, so lovely and helping. So thank you again. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
By the way, Sonny, we gave you a huge shout out today on a podcast we recorded. It'll be 5 or 6 weeks before it comes out, but we're saying if you need treatment, go to Sonny.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting some, and I'm also helping some who are low income, so I'm very happy about that. And I love the fact that, I share with you, David and Elizabeth, like, I actually think that if we don't have to, money is not an issue. It's actually more effective. You don't have to pay for therapy, but of course it's also not realistic. So,
thank you.
Other questions or
David,
comments?
you also asked the group, David, but no one answered, I think, because I might have interrupted. I think you were trying to ask the group, like, how many of you would be afraid to do cognitive exposure?
Yeah, or even tonight.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like a high wire act without a net in a way. It takes courage on the part of the therapist. I loved what we were doing, but I didn't have any guarantee it was going to be effective in the time we had available. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a little bit scary for everybody. I was wondering if any of you have ever had those fears or been reluctant to use exposure. Or
I have supervisors who are concerned when I use exposure because they thought that you'll cause some harm. And in fact, when I survey some of our colleagues outside of team, actually a lot of them are afraid to use exposure, but I found them to be fine. And no one really, I don't think I cause more harm, if anything, like this in a controlled environment.
Yeah, it's all in agenda setting and empathy and having a relationship with the patient. If you start throwing exposure at people like a wild cowboy, you're going to run into a lot of bad experiences. But I've never had a bad experience with exposure. I had one woman that took about 3 or 4 hours before her horrific sadistic fantasies of her child being tortured finally disappeared, and it was freaky along the way, but then suddenly they disappeared and she was cured, and that was after months of failed therapy with all kinds of techniques. But have you ever had a bad experience with it, Jill?
No, I have not. I also have done a lot of exposure with post-traumatic stress disorder and heard just the most horrific things I could ever imagine happening to anyone. And it's just so unbelievably beautiful to see people being able to overcome just haunting memories. So I feel very grateful for exposure because of what I've seen, how I've seen it change people's lives so dramatically. But the other thing, David, I mean, it takes warmth and connection and caring and some skill on the part of the therapist, right? You don't just throw it at a patient. You do need to know what you're doing.
There's skill.
If you don't, you should get supervision. And actually, I would say courage on the part of the therapist is so important because you actually are conveying to your patient the whole time that this is okay, that I'm not afraid. And so if you are terrified, you'll show that to your patient, and I think it won't be effective, So there's getting some training and some supervision, some hand-holding if that's what you need, because otherwise you'll convey fear, which will backfire,
Yeah. And trust is so important. The patient has to trust you. I've had so many fears, and the people who help me overcome them, I've trusted, and the miracle of the anxiety disappearing suddenly happened. And then humor. We had some humor going tonight, Elizabeth. We never talk much about humor. When I'm doing therapy, usually there's quite a bit of humor in there, and it's helpful. Yeah. It can be helpful, if it's kindly and genuinely funny. Any other thoughts? I'm wondering, what is Robert Staffen thinking, or Esther?
Yeah, I was thinking something. This was so terrific. And Elizabeth, what was just interesting at the beginning was you're so concerned about money. And so the thought crossed my mind, well, why didn't you go into the stock market or banking or someplace where the money is? You may make a living as a therapist, but you could have done a lot better at someone else. But you said, this really isn't me. And more, I realized it isn't you at all. You're not at all money grubbing. Your dream is to be able to treat people for free. This was just sort of an add-on you tricked into in your family legacy, but it doesn't seem at all that you need it, as seems now to be clear to you. Mm-hmm. So this has been fantastic.
Thank you, Esther. You always have beautiful things to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I just want to comment, Elizabeth, I can't see you here, but I just love you and admire you so much. And I feel so much more connected to you. I personally work with Elizabeth, and I'm one of the associates.
Oh, how
and
neat.
So as I was listening to the exposure, my heart was just so sad for the pain that you've experienced, and kind of just even, and also, like Sunny mentioned, like that I'm one of the people that benefit from this generous, kind heart that you kind of give and you offer. So I felt really kind of sad and hurt for you as you went through that pain. But then once you kind of had that turning point, I think after the exposure and you were in that image of the 80-year-old, I just felt so much joy and kind of relief for you, because I'm one of the very few that benefits and is so lucky to learn from you. And so I just want to share that. I just so appreciate that. And I'm so grateful and absolutely fortunate to work with you.
Thank you, Rose. I really appreciate that. One of my biggest concerns of doing this was you and Amisha. They both work at our center, and I don't know. I that was one of my big things I thought twice about, like, what would it be like for you to hear all this? So thank you for telling me that.
Well, if anything, I mean, I can totally relate. Like, I completely empathize, and I think I've brought some of these same issues to you, which is why it's so like touching to hear about this. Yeah. And so I just feel so much closer and feel so supported by you. So thank you for sharing this deep piece of vulnerability. I just love you. So thank you.
When all of you share your inner with us, your private inner, and it's just such a fantastic thing. It's such a gift you gave to everybody tonight, Elizabeth.
You know, I'd like to thank all of you. As I told David when we first met, this has not been my world. And to the one, you've all been very gracious and welcome me to this group. And one of the things that I most admire and enjoy about participating is the honesty that goes on here and the trust that gets developed. And I think, David, you set a tone in doing that. And Elizabeth, the kind of disclosure that you are willing, the vulnerability that you show us is just so open and honest. And it allows all of us to display similar levels. I mean, Michael did it a few weeks ago, and it just, you know, I have always enjoyed working in training groups with people that are willing to open themselves up and be vulnerable and be who they are, trusting that the group is going to hold them. And I, from what I see, it seems like you derive tremendous benefit from the work. And I thought, you know, your 85-year-old husband having Parkinson's was just a little icing on the cake, just to kind of tip it over the edge.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This is Zaina. I'm here by phone. I have a question, and I also a question for Jill. But Elizabeth, yeah, thank you so much. I'm just so amazed at your courage and kind of talking about this, especially in front of, you know, people that you work with. I'm really admiring of how kind of brave you were and kind of opening up and talking about this. Thank you for this incredible gift.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Jill, I'm curious. It's funny, like at first when you guys asked, you know, whether like we're comfortable doing exposure, and I thought like, oh, I am comfortable. I've done it before. And then when you started talking about doing it with people with PTSD, I thought to myself, oh yeah, I would be kind of afraid to do it with someone with PTSD. You know, working on something that kind of traumatic. I'm curious if you ever, like, what you would say to people who might worry about, or might say like, you know, well, do you worry about re-traumatizing the person?
Yeah, I mean, what I do think is important with all of us, I wouldn't want someone to leave tonight and go, oh, Jill said I should try this with my PTSD patient, and then go do exposure, you know, not having any training in it. So I say, Before I started using it with patients with PTSD, I took several trainings in using what's called prolonged exposure for PTSD, which is essentially cognitive exposure, but there's just, some other pieces to it. So I don't worry about re-traumatizing, in the sense that essentially the patients with PTSD are re-experiencing their trauma. That's like the symptom, that they all have. And there's lots of other symptoms that go along with it. So they're coming to you re-experiencing their trauma all the time, having nightmares and flashbacks and re-experiencing symptoms, right? And so instead you're actually giving them an opportunity to out loud in a safe space to fully talk through the kind of horrific things that have happened to them with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and to do that over and over and over again until those memories are no longer haunting them. So, the goal is to have them actually experience those memories like very intensely, present tense, eyes closed, etc. But it's to process the memories. It's to no longer be afraid of them, because the problem isn't having the memories. The problem is that, they're basically coming up and then we're pushing them away. Right. And so not pushing them away is essentially what happens in exposure.
So yes, thank you again, David and Jill. I had no doubt in my mind something was going to come of this that would be magical, and it definitely did. And I guess the one comment real quickly around exposure, what the two of you did, which I think you modeled well, is you gave me a multiple choice. And I don't know if people saw that, but that's one. Remember, you were talking about in vivo and you were talking about cognitive flooding. And then you go, oh, but we could just go ahead and work on the thoughts and externalize voices. And then I said, well, are you giving me a choice? Because I was all ready to do the exposure. And that was just a lovely setup. You two were kind of going back and forth with it. And I found my brain going, no, I just want to get the exposure. Let's just do it. Okay. And that's really what you want. You want that experience from somebody. Yeah.
You want the magic.
Exactly.
And you want to you're ready to confront that monster.
That was such a moving experience to observe Elizabeth going through that process with you and David, and to hear all of the accolades that people shared with her and how much they loved watching her go through that at the end of the podcast.
All I can say is thank you, Elizabeth, for the fantastic gift that you've given us. And I think people are always asking the question, well, gosh, you show all these fantastic single session recoveries, but does it last? And we have a little information. How long ago was it, would you say, that we did those sessions? 2 months ago?
I think so. Yes, absolutely. By the time this podcast comes out, it was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Elizabeth wrote to us. She said, hello. She wrote to the Whole Tuesday group. Hello, group.
Today, by the way.
Yes, she wrote today, the day that we're recording this podcast. Last week, April 7th, my schedule went back online after being offline for 3 weeks. The process was seamless. My practice did not fall apart. The other clinicians' schedules did not become empty, and we did not get a bad reputation. I no longer fear I will be 80 years old, desperate with a handful of clients, and supporting my husband who has a terminal illness, or my daughter having to financially support both of us. Even as I write this, I'm smiling and laughing a bit. I do not feel driven by the fear of financial ruin, nor have I compulsively checked my schedule, making sure it is full. I have more brain space to do other things. I believe I have the peace I requested in my miracle cure. Of course I will relapse. I already have a couple of times, and I've quickly recentered. My deep, heartfelt thanks to David, Jill, and all of you who participated with feedback or who witnessed my personal work. My warmest regards, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. And I think the take-home message is it's not always easy. It takes a lot of training and skill, but you can change the way you feel, and you can do it quickly and profoundly. And it doesn't make any difference how long you've been struggling. I think, what did she say? She just turned 50 or...
I don't remember.
Something like that. But she's been struggling since she was 13, and it's been an intense angst every minute of her life. Mm-hmm. And now she's transformed. I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to make any claims. I'm just trying to say you can change your life. You can change the way you think and feel. And thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that living testimonial that you have just provided.
Well, actually, and thank you, David, for creating the team model that allowed Elizabeth to go through the process that she did and reach the moments of peace. And, you've really given a gift to the world.
Thank you.
So thank you. Until next time.
Until next time. Absolutely. Can't wait.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.